There we go. I hear the music still playing. I apologize. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. I'm your host, Frank Acom. We have a lot to cover. Yesterday, Trump celebrated his 100th day in the presidency. We are going to talk about that. A little bit later on in the program, we're going to talk with Mike Gilmartin. He's going to tell us about the library book sale coming up here in Corning. Don't forget, tomorrow on the program, legendary NASCAR racer Kyle Petty will be joining us. And then on Friday, Jen Mullen, she's running for Steuben County Legislature in the district that encompasses Caton, Hornby, and the town of Corning. But let's get right to it. A couple comments from viewers after yesterday's broadcast. Rick writes in, Mike Johnson is a wimp. I'm not sure what that's in reference to. Rick wrote in a little later on saying, good morning, Frank. Well, good morning, Rick. Well, 3 years, 9 months till we get a Democrat back in office to undo the mess Trump has delivered. 200 days ought to be a good marker. I'm betting more intensity for the Donald Trump self-imposed disaster. Wow. That's Rick. Thank you, Rick. A lot of breaking news this morning. Quite a few updates in regards to Albany and specifically the New York State budget. We're going to talk about that as well. First off, on a sad note this morning, we learned late last night that David Horowitz, a well-known conservative commentator, author, and activist, has passed away at the age of 86. He died after a lengthy battle with cancer, according to his foundation, the David Horowitz Freedom Center. His son, Benjamin Horowitz, a co-founder of the venture capitalist firm Andreessen Horowitz, shared an obituary on social media highlighting his career in media and activism, including several books he wrote and his endorsement of President Trump. So David Horowitz, he was a former Marxist who became, kind of was his, not claim to fame, but something that kind of piqued people's interests. He was a former Marxist, then became a conservative commentator. He earned a Bachelor of Arts from Columbia University and a Master's from the University of California, Berkeley. He is survived by his wife, April Mullivan, sons Benjamin and Jonathan, and daughter Anne. His other daughter, Sarah Rose, passed away in 2008. So David Horowitz passing away at the age of 86. Okay, one thing that we learned yesterday, and we're going to go through a lot of this quickly this morning because we have so much to get to, and we have that great interview with Mike Gilmartin coming up in a little bit. But Elon Musk is no longer a regular staple in the White House. He's not working in the White House. He is preparing to transition out of his official role from Doge. We know that he only has legally 130 days as a special government employee. So that, obviously, if you look at Trump celebrating 100 days yesterday, Musk's time leading Doge dwindling down. Instead of meeting with him in person, I'm talking to him on the phone. But it's the same net effect. White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles told the Post in an extensive interview. And by the way, if you get an opportunity, I doubt we'll be able to get to all of it. But the New York Post had a great interview with Susie Wiles. It's exclusive interview is probably, 12 pages long. Definitely worth reading. But I'll continue. Musk, who defined much of Trump's initial weeks back in power, quote, hasn't been here physically, but it really doesn't matter much, said Wiles, stressing that his folks aren't going anywhere. Now, it's unclear how often Musk plans to return to the White House campus before his stint as an unpaid special government employee concludes at the end of May. He will then advise the effort informally. Wiles said he's not all out of it altogether. He's just not physically present as much as he was. The people that are doing this work are here doing things and paying attention to the details. He'll be stepping back a little, but he's certainly not abandoning it. And his people are definitely not. So no longer necessarily day-to-day in the White House, which should come as no surprise. Let's face it. There's been an all-out attack on Musk and specifically his company Tesla. Not just physical attacks with Molotov cocktails and graffiti, but also a drop in sales. So he has to focus on that. That should come as no surprise. This was volunteer work. I know the left kind of gloats in this, that his stocks, well, as a matter of fact, Tim Walz, the man who wanted to be vice president, he gloated that he loves to give himself a boost every day by looking at the stock prices for Tesla. So here's a man who volunteered to work for the government to cut out waste, fraud, and corruption. And because he had the audacity to root out waste, fraud, and corruption, that means that the left wants to see him and his company destroyed. I don't understand the mindset myself. That seems to be the mindset, and there's article after article. We didn't get a chance to get to all of them yesterday. But like, for instance, New York is trying to change the rules so the Tesla dealers have to go through a franchise scenario, make it more difficult for Tesla. This is from the group that has been forcing EV vehicles on us for years, now hating EV vehicles. That's redundant. EVs, electric vehicles, wanting you to own strictly an electric vehicle. Now, if it has a certain brand on it, you're public enemy number one. You're probably going to have your car vandalized. You may be attacked. You may be doxxed. People may start harassing you and trying to intimidate you because you have the audacity to buy an electric vehicle from the group that has demanded and mandated that you buy an electric vehicle. But we'll continue. We don't need to go down that rabbit hole. We could be there all day. Now, yesterday was the rally that we talked about on the program that Trump held in Michigan. First of all, did you see? I don't know. The headline from the New York Post says that he embarrassed Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. I don't know if he embarrassed her. She obviously sees a benefit in at least having a conversation with Trump. And I think everybody should see that benefit. But with the age of the resistance, not everyone does. For instance, when she visited the White House trying to help people in her home state, she was attacked. They said it was the end of her potential run for president. It made her no longer the face of the resistance. And if you recall, even she realized it because when she was in the Oval Office, she put those folders up to her face to try to cover herself, which was very childish and really made matters worse for her. But having said that, and this goes back to Trump's first term, or really any presidential term, I don't understand why you wouldn't want to meet with a president. Republican, Democrat, doesn't matter. You know, if you look at Trump, for instance, the left, and I don't believe this for a moment, but the left has always claimed Trump goes for the last thing he heard. So the last thing he heard, that's what his position will be. Again, I don't buy into that at all. But if that were the case, then why in the world would you not want to meet with him if you're a Democrat? But look at how many Democrats have gotten, especially in Hollywood, their careers destroyed, been attacked, been questioned. And in the case of Gretchen Whitmer, they pretty much wrote off her presidential campaign just because she was trying to help the people in her home state. But without going on a tangent much longer, President Trump called Democrat Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer up on stage at the first of the two celebratory events to mark his first 100 days in office. This was at the Air National Guard base. Pardon me. He said, "I want to thank Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. You know, I'm not supposed to do that. She's a Democrat. They say, don't do that. Don't have her here. I said, no, she's going to be here. She's done a very good job. For decades, they've been trying to save this facility, including your governor, who has done a very good job. She came to me. That's the reason she came to me, by the way, to save Selfridge. She was very effective. The president then invited Whitmer, seen by many as a potential candidate for 2028, to say a few words, leaving her visibly ill at ease. Quote, well, I hadn't planned to speak, but on behalf of all the military men and women who served our country and served so honorably on behalf of the state of Michigan, I'm really happy we're here to celebrate this recapitalization. Now, I know last time he invited her to the White House or to the Oval Office, and we had people on the show, and I heard other people say it as well. Why would he do that? She's a Democrat, kind of to his point with what he's saying at the rally. I call me naive. I think the reason he invites her to do these things is he's taking out a potential challenger to, well, if you hear him, maybe himself, but J.D. Vance or whoever would be the Republican nominee, because she was a rising star. I think she still is in a way. I know J.B. Pritzker, for whatever reason, seems to be the talk of the town. CNN has a huge piece on him today talking about him running for 2028. The New York Times essentially endorsed him after they essentially endorsed AOC, so it gets a little confusing this early on in the game. But, I mean, she still has a very bright future, but he's just knocking her down a peg, knowing full well that if she does run in 2028, her opponent can easily play the clips from those rallies. That's my thought on it. But maybe he really believes she's doing a good job and does really find the need to praise her. Now, we've got quite a few other things on Trump's first 100 days. What did you think of the rally? Did you watch it? Also, there's a lot about New York State. Yesterday, we talked about the budget, but there's a lot here about the budget, but also about potential gubernatorial candidates on the Republican side. A few things here about the media. Who knows what we'll be able to get to coming up in this hour, but after the next segment, we'll be talking with Mike Gilmartin about the library book sale. That's a big event each year. It's for the Friends of the Southeast Steuben County Library. It's at the East Corning Fire Hall, and it starts this Saturday. We're going to talk about that and some other fun stuff. Also, since I have you for just a moment, don't forget, the Corning Moose is holding a great event. If you missed Wienerville last time, you missed a blast. So I can't wait to see this event, the Cinco de Derby, a combination of Cinco de Mayo and Derby Day this Saturday. $15 gets you 2 tacos or an order of nachos, a buffet of assorted foods, and access to games, raffles, good music. Now, don't forget to wear your Kentucky Derby hat, folks. That's the big one. You can win yourself a prize. So it's this Saturday. The event's from 4 to 10 p.m. The food is from 4 to 7. So don't miss it. And it goes to benefit Potter's Hands, which is a great organization. So we'll be promoting that heavy for the next few days because I know it's that time of year where we're all getting busy with yard work and the like. But Saturday's a big day, so I hope everyone can make it out. All right. Let's take our first break. Running just a little bit late here on Frankly Speaking. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Mark writes in, good morning, Frank. Well, good morning, Mark. It's simple why Democrats want to go after Musk, as he has found their waste and fraud and kickbacks. Yeah, they make it very obvious they don't want, they always say, we've got to change Washington. We've got to clean up Washington. They don't mean it. Because when the tough decisions are made, they go running and protesting Elon Musk. Now, Trump said yesterday during his rally, we're just getting started. We've accomplished more in 3 months than most administrations accomplish in 4 years or even 8 years. And we're just getting started. Believe me, we're just getting started. The president touted his administration's crackdown on illegal immigration, economic policies, and cost-cutting initiatives throughout his 90-minute speech. Under President Trump, America is a dumping ground for criminals no longer, he said. They're not even trying to come in. He unveiled a dramatic video of deported migrants, alleged members of gangs, TDA and MS-13, arriving in El Salvador's notorious, quote, hellhole mega prison during his campaign rally-like remarks. It was very much a campaign rally. I mean, I know, obviously by definition it isn't, but it just seemed like it was back in October, didn't it? I banned all welfare to illegals, and I signed an order that will end automatic citizenship for the children of illegal aliens. No citizenship, he said. For years, Joe Biden and the media told us that stopping the flood of illegal immigration was absolutely impossible. He said it was impossible. He didn't know what the heck he was talking about. It turned out that all we needed was a new president. He loves that line. So did you happen, if you watched the rally, I'd love to hear your opinion on it, but did you happen to see the interview with ABC's Terry Moran? Again, we have been talking a lot on this program for a long time, really, but recently as well, about the lack of credibility, the loss of faith in the media. And a lot of it points to their lack of coverage when it comes to Biden's mental acuity, and, of course, the laser-like focus on Trump. I think Terry Moran just kind of solidified, again, the perception, it's not a perception, it's a known bias by the media. It was an aggressive kind of fact check type interview. Moran first pressed Trump on the 145% levies he's imposed on China, arguing that the tariff is bound to, quote, raise prices on everything. That is a claim the president has strongly disagreed with. You don't know that. You don't know whether or not China's going to eat it, Trump interjected at one point. Moran then, of course, because it's no longer an interview, it is inquisition. That's mathematics, Moran yelled. Trump insisted China probably will eat those tariffs, but at 145%, they basically can't do much business with the United States. And they were making from us $1 trillion a year. They are ripping us off like nobody's ever ripped us off. Everything's going to be just fine. It wouldn't have been if I didn't do this. Then on immigration, the president's most popular issue with voters, Trump described his effort to combat illegal border crossing and deport criminal migrants as the most significant accomplishment of his first 100 days. Moran tried to get Trump to acknowledge that, quote, under our law, every single person who gets deported gets a hearing first. But the president refused to agree with that point, saying when Biden allowed 21 million people to flow into this country, did we give them a hearing when they came in? He asked. It was a fair point. Trump indicated that he would ask the lawyers about that, but maintained that trials for 21 million people would result in too slow of a process. The law is a law, Moran pressed. But the president insisted that a legal process is being allowed. They get whatever my lawyers say, Trump said of the legal rights his administration is affording deportees. Then, of course, Moran, seeing an opportunity to tout the Democrat talking points, started the discussion on Gilmar Abrego Garcia. Now, the story broke yesterday that all the way back in 2018, there are court documents that claim that Garcia has MS-13 affiliation. So this is the second or third time we've heard this. There's been the first time, the first major story was that he was arrested while driving a human trafficker's vehicle. So again, 2018 court documents is the latest claim of MS-13 affiliation for Abrego Garcia. But Moran wanted to use this opportunity to push the Democrat talking points and to try to, I guess, I don't know how they believe this is a winning issue, that the left, and yes, of course I equate Moran in the left, how they can consider it a winning issue. So Trump said the lawyer that said it was a mistake was here a long time, was not appointed by us, should not have said that. This is an MS-13 gang member, a tough cookie, been in a lot of skirmishes, beat the heck out of his wife. Okay? This is not an innocent, wonderful gentleman from Maryland. Moran argued that he's not saying Garcia is a good guy. It's about the rule of law. Moran said, you could get him back. There's a phone on this desk. You could pick it up and call up the president of El Salvador and say, send him back now. I'm telling you, Moran, again, showed the media's true colors on this, showing that, again, they have to be aggressive. It's just like during the debate with the fact-checking. This is not a conversation. This is not a sit-down interview with the president. This is Moran trying gotcha moments and also trying to lecture the president of the United States, because Terry Moran now knows better than the president of the United States. He knows, because his whole bubble is those on the left. He knows what would really be right for this country. He knows what the American people really want. Keep in mind, he doesn't talk with the American people. His bubble is all far left elites. But when he said you could pick up that phone on your desk right now, the president said, if he were the gentleman that you say he is, I would do that. And then they butted heads, because it does look like Garcia has MS-13 tattoos, that he has MS-13 on his knuckles, is what Trump said. And Moran said it was Photoshop. Then Trump said, that was Photoshop? Terry, you're not being very nice. I don't want to go back. I hate falling into the trap of just reading quotes. But again, showing why there is that lack of credibility in the mainstream media. But we've got to take a break, because coming up next, we're going to be talking with Mike Gilmartin. That is about the upcoming Steuben County, the official term is Friends of the Southeast Steuben County Library Spring Book Sale. And we go, it's in full disclosure, pre-recorded. We go on a little tangent about baseball, so I hope you don't mind. Then when we come back, we've got a lot more on Trump's first 100 days. We do need to get to New York State issues and the budget. Some suggesting that Governor Hochul's victory lap yesterday may have been a little premature. We'll talk about that as well. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Aiken. We're broadcasting from the Hesselson studio. In that studio, Mike's about to talk about the upcoming book sale. This is a big one. Everybody looks forward to this each year. Let's get right to it. Are you guys going to be ready for the big day?
I just left the East Corning Fire Hall.
Yeah.
There's 30 volunteers working very, very hard to get things set up.
Yeah.
As I mentioned to you before we went on air, if you were there the first day, which was yesterday, you'd say to yourself, they're never going to get it done.
No way, right?
But we always manage to do it. We have a veteran crew of volunteers, and they go right to their areas that they're comfortable with.
Yeah.
And they just do a wonderful job.
It really is a big deal in our community. You do a spring and a fall book sale.
Yes.
But people look forward to it, and it really prepares them. In this case, you have all your summer reading.
Yes.
And then it's brilliant.
Yeah.
What should people know? I know one of the big takeaways, and while I ask this question, I'm going to put the dates and times up on the screen. One of the big takeaways is make sure you bring cash or checks, right? Because there's only cash or checks. Not everybody's used to just carrying.
I can't answer that, but cash is king.
Yeah, right. So you're never going wrong with cash. And so it kicks off Saturday, and it progressively gets, I guess you could say, cheaper and cheaper as the week goes on.
Starting Monday, it goes down 10% a day. So by Friday, everything is half price.
Yes.
And then Saturday, of course, is the bag sale, where you could get your summer reading for cheap.
Little of nothing. And there's not just books, there's CDs, DVDs, puzzles. Do not miss it. And we're going to be promoting it all next week, because I know people, as I say, look forward to it. Now, one of the things I like the most about, and I try to go every year, sometimes twice a year, is to look for a specific kind of niche book. And you know this about me, but I like finding boxing books because I'm a big boxing fan. And it's not like you can go to your local bookstore and find too many boxing books. There, normally, I can find a few. You're kind of the same way with baseball, correct?
Yeah, I mean, I have such an extensive collection of baseball books that it's rare for me to find something that I didn't know about anyway.
Right.
But when I do, it's a thrill.
Oh, of course. What was it that led to your kind of lifetime of interest in baseball?
Okay. I was born in 1945.
Okay.
So I'm the classic baby boomer.
Right.
And as I think you know, I grew up in the Bronx in a real blue-collar neighborhood. My dad was a baseball fan, of course. I probably started following baseball closely when I was about 6 or 7.
Wow. Yeah.
I'm going to be 80 this year.
Yeah.
So I'm talking a long, long time of absorbing baseball and baseball history. Coupled with the fact that I'm a retired English professor. So of all the sports, I'd have to say baseball has the richest literary tradition.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Okay. And back in the day, in the 50s, it ruled.
Yeah.
I mean, it was the national pastime. I would say that the sports that were distant second, third, and fourth were college football, boxing,
Right.
you'll appreciate
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
and horse racing,
Yeah,
which might surprise a lot of
How
people.
appropriate coming up on Derby weekend, Kentucky Derby weekend.
Yeah. And of course, with the ascendancy of the NFL, which began in 1956, really, and you know the NFL is unquestionably number one, and horse racing and boxing have kind of fallen off the list. Baseball's hanging in there.
Yeah.
More as a regional sport now than
Yeah.
as a national sport.
Yeah. That's interesting.
So I mentioned growing up in the Bronx. It was truly the golden age of New York City baseball.
Yeah.
For example, from 1947 through 1958, a New York team was in the World Series.
Wow. Yeah.
Now, of course, the Yankees won a lot of
A lot
those.
of them. Yeah.
Maybe 6 or 7 during that period. But there were also the Giants at the Polo Grounds in Manhattan, and the Dodgers, of course, in Brooklyn at Ebbets Field. So even within the city, it was kind of regionalized.
Yeah.
You rooted for the team that was your neighborhood team.
Right. It's almost like in politics and wards. You had your wards, right?
Yeah, yeah. So obviously, given where I grew up, I became a Yankee fan. Not because they were great, and they were, but they were the hometown team.
Yeah. Well, that worked
Okay.
out for you.
And it was the golden age. And a real good example of that, Frank, is that you had 3 teams in the city, and each had a Hall of Fame center fielder.
Okay.
What are the odds
Yeah.
of that?
That's a great
Mickey,
point.
Mickey Mantle, of course, with the Yanks, Willie Mays with the
Yeah.
Giants, and Duke Snyder
Yeah.
with the Dodgers. I mean,
Yeah.
the odds are unbelievable.
Yeah. Isn't that-
You know, it was a special time to be a baseball fan.
Has your love for the game ever wavered, or has it always been pretty consistent?
I say there were stretches when the Yankees were not good, but I hung with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when they are good, I watch every game I can.
Yeah.
So I probably, in a typical year, counting playoffs, watch them 120 times on TV.
Wow.
You know, the West Coast games, I may not stay up for all of them, but I'm in there with them.
Yeah. Yeah. When you were younger and you were in the city, were you able to attend a lot of games? Was that something that was affordable back then? Because now there's a lot of complaints of a family of 4 couldn't afford tickets if they mortgaged their house.
I would have to agree with you. But back when I was growing up, the tickets, factoring in inflation and everything, were reasonable. And because we could walk to Yankee Stadium from the neighborhood, we didn't have to deal with parking and that sort of thing. The food was relatively cheap. You know, a hot dog might have been a quarter.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
So on weekends, maybe 4 or 5 times during the summer, my dad would take me on a Sunday. But your listeners and viewers might find this interesting. we'd be playing stickball in the streets
Sure.
in the summertime. And the cops, I don't mean to use that term
No, of course
in a
not.
derogatory sense, would cruise the neighborhoods, and to get us off the streets, they would give us bleacher seats.
Wow. That's a
Okay?
great idea.
Yeah. I'm sure there was a PBA fund.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Those seats cost 50 cents.
Okay.
So maybe once a week,
Yeah.
my friends and I would
Isn't that-
walk to Yankee Stadium. Those bleacher seats, God knows what they cost now.
Right.
They sure don't cost 50 cents. No. And there you were, sitting behind Mickey Mantle.
Isn't that amazing? Did you have a favorite player when you were? Oh, maybe I don't want to say of all time because with boxing it's always who's your favorite boxer, but then you have a weight class and things like that.
Yeah.
Do you have one that you remember, especially growing up, that meant more to you?
That's a good question. Now, obviously, the Yankees were loaded with superstars.
Right.
But my favorite player was an excellent ball player who's kind of been lost to time. He was an infielder by the name of Gil McDougald.
Okay.
He actually won the Rookie of the Year in the same year that Mickey Mantle came up.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. He was the first rookie to hit a grand slam in a World Series. But his great talent was his versatility. He was an all-star at 3 different infield positions: second base, third base, shortstop. And that's incredible.
Why do you think he got lost to history?
Well,
I'm not completely, of course, but
yeah. Well, it's easy to answer that. Mantle, Berra, Rizzuto, Whitey
Fair
Ford,
enough. Yeah, that's true.
And he played for them basically from 51 through 60. So he was on all those World Series teams during the Golden Age and played a huge part in the Yankees being so successful.
Yeah.
Casey Stengel loved him because of his versatility.
Now, you've watched so many Yankees games in your life, and you've seen how baseball is trying to, I don't know if adapt's the right word, or make some changes to try to bring more fans back in. Do you think that's going to prove successful? Do you think that's a good idea? Do you like the changes?
For the most part, I do. I like the pitch clock.
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't think I would, but I do. It does speed up the game. It's knocked about 10 to 12 minutes off the length of the game. I like that relief pitchers have to face 3 batters, so you don't have that endless parade.
Right. Yeah.
5 relief pitchers in an inning, which just kills the momentum of a game.
It sure does.
One rule that I've come to like that I didn't think I would was the extra inning rule,
Okay.
which only applies during the regular season. Game is tied after 9 innings. 10th inning begins with a man on second base. And I thought, boy, that's kind of chintzy. But what I've come to find out is that there's a lot of strategy involved.
I would think. Yeah.
For example, if you're the visiting team, you're batting first, of course. You really want to score more than 1 run because you have to make the assumption that the home team's going to score a run.
Of course.
Since a man is starting out at second base.
Yeah.
So there's that strategy. Okay. I never had a problem with the DH because pitchers are terrible hitters.
As a rule,
just
yes.
terrible
Yeah.
hitters. And so by and large, I like the changes. I'm going to be interested to see what happens when they implement the strike zone that's automated.
Yeah, essentially.
Okay.
Yeah.
You watch a game, and it's pretty clear the home plate umpires, it's a tough job.
Yeah.
They miss a lot of pitches. And you can't argue balls and strikes.
Right.
They do use it in spring training. They have used it in the minor leagues.
Yeah.
So a lot of major leaguers are used to it now.
Sure.
But they did use it in spring training at the major league level. And it seemed that when a ball strike was challenged, the catcher, the pitcher, or the batter are the only ones who could challenge it. It can't come from the bench. They're pretty quick in reviewing it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the key. 5, 6 seconds.
Yeah.
If they could keep that pace, I think they'll be all right.
Okay.
All right.
Do you have an opportunity to go to games anymore?
Good question. Major league games, no.
Yeah.
My buddies and I used to take a long weekend trip in summers. We did it for 30 or 40 years, 10, 12 of us.
Yeah.
And we pick a city within about a 5-hour radius of Corning.
Yeah.
And we leave on Thursday and had tickets for the 3 weekend games. Of course, those roads were dusty, so we made a lot of pit stops.
I'm sure you did. I'm sure you did.
And I was in charge of the logistics, finding the motel and so on and so forth. And it was wonderful.
Yeah.
I'd have to say that my favorite baseball city is Pittsburgh.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
It's a cool city.
It is.
It's very manageable. And it's one of those retro stadiums.
Yeah.
It's modern but made to look vintage. What a ballpark.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
You could see, the skyline, the bridges, the rivers. But we've been to the usual suspects, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Baltimore, Washington, Philadelphia,
Yeah.
Boston, New
Sure.
York. So anymore, though, unfortunately, many of my buddies have passed. That doesn't happen, and I miss it. So minor league has replaced my live attendance.
Sure.
And we're fortunate that we have the team in Binghamton.
Yeah.
Even though it's a Mets team.
Is that difficult? I was going to ask.
Yeah. But, my buddies and I used to go to, particularly when Trenton would come in, because Trenton was, no longer is, a Yankee farm team.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So we were either Met fans or Yankee fans, so it was a great opportunity to yap at each other.
Of course.
At a reasonable price.
Right, right.
I mean, you could go there with $20 in your pocket,
Yeah. And have a good day.
have your beer,
Yep.
a nice seat, a couple of hot dogs,
Yeah.
and, be home by 11 o'clock at night.
And there's nothing better on a summer's day.
No.
No, it's
And,
something.
again, and I need to tell you this little anecdote.
Sure.
We'd always like to get to the ballpark early to see batting practice, fielding practice. I think fans who don't do that miss out.
I do.
So a number of years ago, I walked in, and the Yankees were taking fielding practice. And I happened to glance out at right field, and there was this giant out there. I said, who was that guy?
Yeah.
Well, of course, it was Aaron Judge.
Yeah.
So in the top of the first inning, he's batting third. And the ballpark there is very symmetrical. And dead center field, I'm going to say, was 410 feet.
Okay.
About 100 feet past that is a railroad yard,
Okay.
boxcars.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. He gets up in the first inning, and he hits Frank a BB.
Yeah.
Couldn't have been more than 20 feet off the ground.
Yeah.
Not only does it go over the center field wall, but it hits a boxcar on the fly.
Perfect.
And I'm saying, I hope this guy makes it.
Yeah.
And yes, he did.
Well, on that note, we are going to go full circle back to the library book sale, because I do think if you have a passion, like you have a passion for baseball, I do for boxing, don't just go to this book sale thinking you're probably not going to find something that fits your niche, because it is pretty remarkable, the books and items that are donated, isn't it?
And it's all the community. It's a win-win-win situation. You get rid of books you don't want.
Right.
I get to buy books I do want for cheap.
Yeah.
And the library, of course, is the big winner.
Yeah.
At the end of the second sale, after we deduct expenses, we give them a pretty hefty check. and they could do with that what they will.
Right.
But usually, my understanding is that they use it for children's
Oh, that's great.
summer program.
Which their summer programming for kids is like no other. I mean, it's got such a great reputation.
Yeah.
And if people want to join the Friends of the Southeast Steuben County Library, they can actually join that first day and get the deal right at the door.
Yes, individual membership is $5. Family membership, no matter how large the family, is $10. But the membership is good for 2 sales,
Oh, okay.
so it's very reasonable.
Yeah, well, reasonable anyway. I know, and what I find interesting, like you said, you find baseball, I find boxing, but there was a couple of years where I just found like a niche of W.C. Fields books. And
Yeah.
I love, so you never know. And as someone that loves his movies, I would go and here I had 2 or 3 in a 2 or 3 year period.
Yeah.
You never know what you're going to find.
Yeah, I think one of the hallmarks of our sale, thanks to the volunteers,
Yeah.
it's very well organized.
Yes.
Given that, we start with this jumble.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, my particular area of contribution, if you would, is what we call the specials table.
Yep.
I subtitled the most valuable real estate in the hall
Yeah.
because those were where we price books individually, the high-end books.
Right.
And when dealers and collectors come in, that's the first place they go. All right? Now, I do not price books at their full retail value because if you're a dealer, you got to make a profit.
Sure.
You're buying to resell. But we're not going to sell those books as though they were common books.
Right.
And this sale is no exception. I'm about halfway done setting up that tables. It's amazing,
Yeah.
the books that come into us.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I've bought in quite a few through the years, autograph books.
Yes,
I
we
love
have a
that part.
special section
Yep.
within the specials table.
Well, Mike, thanks for giving us so much time because I know you got to get back to work. They're gonna
I
be mad
do.
at you.
I do.
We got to take a short break, but thanks for being with us. We'll do it again next year. Or in
Thanks
the
so
fall.
much.
All right, we'll be right back. Frankly speaking, stay with us.
The sun peeking through the clouds as we look at our beautiful view from the Frankly Speaking roof cam, brought to you by Boss Automation. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Boss Security in Horseheads. Okay, we are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. Let's go to some viewer comments. We were talking about the interview, the fiery interview with Donald Trump and ABC News anchor Terry Moran. One viewer says, to answer your question, no, I don't watch tabloid news organizations. Fair point. Comment from a different viewer during our interview. I grew up in Binghamton area way back when the Yankees had their farm team there. So I got to see players like Thurman Munson and Joe Pepitone, to name a few. That's an amazing opportunity. Thank you for that. It wasn't in Binghamton when it was the Mets. They were affiliated with the Mets when Tim Tebow played. Comment from a different viewer. Good morning, Frank. Well, good morning. After watching Trump's interview with Terry Moran, it was clear that the media has learned nothing. The media, who never asked Biden a tough question, tries to get Trump on everything. That is a wonderful point. Trump, however, wins again. His line about Moran getting the interview because he never heard of him was the punch that let Moran know that he's still a featherweight. I would agree. I think Trump, that's what's so interesting, and that's why I watched the Sunday shows during the campaign, because with J.D. Vance, Mike Johnson, others, that Tom Cotton, that when they were getting these, quote, fact checks in real time or these kind of gotcha questions, they could handle it so perfectly. Trump takes it really to the next level and did do a great job of knocking Moran down a peg. And even the articles you read, Moran continued to poke. He continued to prod. I agree with what the viewer has to say. They haven't learned their lesson. They realize this is not why people watch interviews with the president. They want to learn. It's much like why I say that right now I understand why Republicans aren't holding town halls, the congressmen and women, because they're not done in good faith. This interview was not done in good faith. I'm not going to go through the back and forth with reading the quotes. But I love the line when Moran asked him about Abrego Garcia, saying, you could have him returned right now. And Trump said, I could. And if he were the gentleman that you say he is, I would do that. But let's just focus on the media for a second before we go to a break, because there's a lot here that we could go into, and I'm not going to go through all of them. But Chuck Todd, former NBC News host, claimed this week that the establishment media didn't miss the story on former President Joe Biden's mental decline. Now, this comes off the heels of when he actually said they missed the story, essentially, when he was still working for NBC, because he was bragging that someone told him years ago that Biden wasn't doing well mentally. And we said at the time, then why didn't you tell the American people then? Why did you do it now after the debate when it was so clear to people and you had no choice but to cover it? He spoke against the virtue signaling of many who say that the establishment media covered up the mental decline of Biden. However, he said that this was not a media failure, but a failure of the Democrat Party. He then said it is a right-wing manufactured right-wing premise in order to stain the media. No, that's not the case at all. They are now trying to blame the Democrat Party when, as the controversy around Trump not letting the AP into the Oval Office and these type of things, why would that be a controversy if these media outlets aren't always around the president? They were around Biden. They knew the issues. They refused to report on them and actually criticized you if you questioned the videos you saw, if you questioned his mental acuity. So to say that this is right-wing manufactured right-wing premise is so trite. This is what they do to try to distract. And this is why people like Chuck Todd are a failure in the media, and why the media in general have been, the legacy media, a failure, because of the gaslighting, which I think that term's way overused, but the gaslighting that, no, it's not them, it's the Democrat Party that's been doing this. Todd believes that there were those that carried water for Biden on establishment networks, but he claims they were merely pundits, not actual journalists. Quote, there were water carriers, but they're not real journalists. I refuse to accept the premise of what Jen Psaki was saying. No offense to her, but she's not a journalist. She's a former spokesman for Joe Biden. So yeah, no, the establishment media didn't miss the story at all, folks. Not at all. It was the Democrat Party. Oh, and there were certain people in the media, but he doesn't consider them journalists, to twist themselves into a pretzel. But actually, Elizabeth Warren said similar on CNN's The Source. Senator Elizabeth Warren said it's not about whether people covered up Biden's decline in 24 or 23. So look, it's all clear. We saw what Joe Biden did at the debate, and it was really sad to see. But I made clear that I had seen what I had met with him individually and when I'd seen him up speaking. But right now, we are in a moment where it's not about what happened last year or a year before. We've got to take a short break. All right, this hour's moving quickly. Thank you again to Mike Gilmartin. We'll show you those times for the book sale coming up this Saturday a little bit later on. But stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking. Thank you to Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Ken writes in, does anyone really think that the legacy media is going to, quote, learn their lesson or start reporting political news honestly? They have no lesson to learn. They are doing and will continue to do into perpetuity their job as the operable wing of the Democrat Party. I agree. It's what I've said in the past, Ken. I've said on this program a lot. It's really, at the end of the day, not about ratings or even the money that comes in. It's about pushing an agenda. So when we say learning the lesson, it's kind of just a throwaway term, not one that we mean seriously. Because, no, I did not believe, for instance, though, that Chuck Todd no longer works for NBC, but a Chuck Todd or Terry Moran or George Stephanopoulos, whoever, was going to wake up one morning after election and say, we really need to get our act together. There was no way. They, in their minds, just weren't effective enough at pushing their agenda. Trump rubbing it in. Yesterday, his White House released a list of the most erroneous hoaxes perpetrated by the media in the first 100 days, saying since President Donald J. Trump took office 100 days ago, it has been a nonstop deluge of hoaxes and lies from Democrats and their allies and the fake news, suffering from terminal cases of Trump derangement syndrome. The administration went on to list 57 hoaxes spread by the president's critics, the media, and the Democrats. We don't have time to get to all of them, but as we saw yesterday, with his reaction to Terry Moran. He's not going to take what the media is dishing out, and that's one of the reasons why he won in a landslide, because the media could see in real time the people could see in real time how the media handled the Biden administration as compared to how they were handling Trump. And it's why there is no credibility when it comes to the mainstream legacy media. But we are out of time for hour number 1. Coming up in the next hour, a couple other quick breaking stories on Trump that we're going to get to really quickly. And then we need to get to the New York State budget, because some are suggesting that Governor Hochul may have taken that victory lap a little early. We're going to talk about that. So stay with us. Hour number 1 in the books. Hour number 2, mere moments away. Hour number 2 of Frankly Speaking, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. We are back. All right, let's get right to it. Comment from a viewer. Gretchen Whitmer has been on the wrong side of most things, but she may be smart enough to realize the Trump train is the only train going anywhere. Thank you very much. I was not aware of this until this morning, but Senate Minority Leader Charles Schumer, he kicked off what he previously advertised as an all-nighter on the Senate floor by Democrats planning to rail against President Trump for actions over his first 100 days. So Cory Booker has, I don't know if you could call it success, but gets some praise for pulling an all-nighter, essentially 25 hours, and what was a 5-minute speech. It got a lot of attention on him temporarily, at least by the resistance, people that wanted to see something done to fight Trump. Now, I think it's ironic because it's kind of the problem that the Democrats are in. A lot of talk, nothing of real substance came from it. But Chuck Schumer, who, again, proves that he just doesn't have the fight in him anymore, doesn't know how to handle the Trump era of politics, sees Cory Booker's quote unquote success and says, hey, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to do it. We're going to pull the all-nighter to show our voters that we're fighting hard against Trump. Speaking just before the endeavor was interrupted by 2 scheduled votes, including the final ambassadorship confirmation of the day, Schumer said it had been 100 days of corruption and cronyism that are forcing much higher costs on the American people. It really is awful. This is a threat to our democratic republic. He's acting like a king, a mob boss, a wannabe dictator. He said he wanted to be a dictator on day 1. It looks like he's extending it. Any quarter of opposition that might just say something in our tradition of free speech and debate, he tries to crush the law firms, crush the universities, go after the judges, which have been the foundation of our republic. That judges are independent and are able to stop an executive that's going too far. Let us commit ourselves, all of us Democrats here in the Senate, against this administration and to uphold the core values and principles of this beautiful nation, which he must fight to preserve and protect. Now, earlier in the day, Schumer was actually challenged by CNN on his sinking poll numbers within his own party. He said, polls come and go. Our party is united. Senator Richard Blumenthal also took shots at the president, saying his administration had been cruel and dumb. Wow, this is really intelligent stuff. Interrupted again by a procedural vote on an energy standards bill from Senator John Husted. The all-nighter is expected to continue thereafter. I don't see too many people following it closely, but perhaps, I guess that's what the people that are protesting 3-4 times a week want, a show with no real substance. Now, Chuck Schumer is listening, he says, but he's still sure he was right. I felt I did the right thing when it comes to not shutting down the government. So still defiant, even though his poll numbers have plummeted, even though there are calls for his leadership position to be diminished. But now they're talking for a long time, and they believe that's going to be successful. Did you see yesterday? This is the kind of stuff that drives the media and the left crazy. Donald Trump was asked, who would you like to see succeed Pope Francis? He said, I'd like to be Pope. That would be my number one choice. He said, I must say, we have a cardinal that happens to be out of a place called New York who's been very good. So we'll see what happens. Yes, so Trump would like to be the next pope. Now, don't think for a moment they won't run with that and try to suggest it's another power grab, but obviously a joke there. By the way, disgraced ex-representative George Santos, who we brought to you last week, that received that very, very lengthy sentence. He's begging Trump for a pardon. Makes sense. Why not? Ask for it. The worst you can get is no. Okay, let's talk about New York State issues, folks. And we have other Trump stories to get to a little bit later on, maybe a couple of recaps of his 100 days, those type of things. But there is a lot coming out of Albany that needs to be addressed. First of all, as an update from a story last week, New York State legislators got one step closer to legalizing assisted suicide for terminally ill people. The state assembly, following nearly 5 hours of emotional debate, passed the controversial Medical Aid in Dying Act 81-67, with actually around 20 Democrats breaking rank to oppose the measure. Each and every life has value, Assemblywoman Mary Beth Walsh from Saratoga said. Progress may not be on a straight line, and we look different to each, and it looks different to each of us. But this idea of giving up and dying is not excelsior, ever upward. It's incredibly sad, referencing our state motto. The measure would allow a mentally competent adult that has been given a diagnosis of 6 months or less to be prescribed a lethal cocktail of drugs if they choose. Some critics, like Walsh, argue the bill amounts to state-sponsored assisted suicide, which I don't know how else you could look at it. Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes, Democrat from Erie, said, I watched my mom die, I watched my daughter die, and I know that for a fact that none of us are getting out of here alive. At some point or the other, we're all going to go. But I don't believe there should be a combination of 6 drugs offered to someone to end their life. State Senate Majority Leader Andrea Stewart-Cousins acknowledged that the proposal has gained traction over the last few years and that she would discuss it with members. She did not commit to bringing it to a floor vote. The conversation has begun in earnest last year, so I think we have time to look at it seriously, she said. Now, it's unclear if Governor Hochul would support the measure if passed in both chambers. So one step closer to that state-sponsored assisted suicide. One thing we learned about in the budget yesterday, starting this fall, every public school student in New York will receive free breakfast and lunch. There'll be no application, no income limit, or even paperwork required. Now, we had talked with Assemblyman Joe Sempolinski about this, and he made a good point. Obviously, there can be a stigma if you are getting free breakfast and lunch when other students are paying. So why not give everybody a card? So, they all look exactly the same. Some cards have money from your parents. Some cards have money from essentially the state. But no, of course, in the state's brilliance, they say, no, everybody, no matter what the parents' income, they get a free breakfast and free lunch. So every student now qualifies in New York's public school system. Doesn't matter how much the household income. And the meals will be available every day, covering both breakfast and lunch. Districts will not need to screen students for eligibility or require paperwork. The funding will be distributed directly to schools based on enrollment. The New York State Education Department will provide updated implementation guidelines ahead of next year's school year. The Free School Meal Initiative is part of a broader affordability plan included in New York's fiscal year 2026 budget, such as the $2 billion in inflation refund checks that we talked about so extensively yesterday. Everybody having such great ideas of where they're going to spend their roughly $200. So, again, free school meals. $340 million it will cost. I'm sure it will exceed that. But as of right now, $340 million budgeted for free breakfast and lunch for every student, no matter their household income. Now, Governor Hochul made the declaration that the budget was, and we brought it to you yesterday, and that it was pretty much all over but the shouting. that it's pretty much a done deal, that they had reached a general agreement. Some don't see it that way. Assemblymember Gary Pretlow, chair of the House's Finance Committee, said Hochul's budget announcement was premature. This is how he put it. You go to your prospective spouse and you say, honey, I love you, but I don't think we should get married. And your prospective spouse says, but the invitations are out. And with that statement, you decide to get married and live miserably for the rest of your life. But you did it because the invitations were out. This is the governor giving us invitations, trying to force us into something that we don't necessarily want to do right now. It's a bleak analogy. So is it a little early? I know we're talking about the substance and specifically the policies in this bill. Where are we? Is it a done deal? Governor Hochul yesterday essentially taking a victory lap. So we're going to tell you, I've got a really good piece here when we come back from break from the New York Post editorial board about the budget. Then I do have a couple updates on not just gubernatorial candidates, but also lieutenant governor. Or excuse me, not lieutenant governor, attorney general candidates. So we'll talk about that. Keep your comments, keep your waves coming in. What did you think of Trump's rally last night? What did you think of the interview, if you watched it, with Terry Moran? I would love to hear from you, but I don't want to run too late. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. As always, we thank our good friends at Boss Security for bringing us the Frankly Speaking roof cam. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street. A lot of action on Market Street if my eyes are darting around. So we're looking everywhere. Let's go to some viewer comments. Comment from this viewer: I'm curious to know if viewer Rick wants our president and our nation to be successful. Well, that's a question only Rick can answer. I'd be happy to hear from Rick and relay that if he's willing to answer. Comment from a different viewer: Affordability Act, lower taxes, quit chasing businesses out of New York State. Maybe then all families could afford to pay for food at school. Yeah, it is something ironic about paying for free breakfast and lunch for everyone, no matter what the household income, saying it's because of affordability issues. As they increase taxes, look at the budget, $254 billion is what's being proposed, I think, as they're driving out businesses, driving out jobs, taxing us into oblivion, people leaving in mass exodus. So yes, I would agree with you. Now the Post says it took Governor Hochul and lawmakers an extra month to agree on this fiasco. Legislative leaders and the governor sealed a budget deal Monday, nearly a month after the deadline. But some saying it's not completely sealed. But yet the plan, with its mind-blowing $254 billion price tag. Now that's $15 billion more than last year. Risks fiscal disaster within just months. It makes zero provisions for cuts in federal aid that are clearly coming, that we all know, that we're all seeing will be coming from this administration, because let's face it. Number one, Governor Hochul picked a fight with Trump day one, the day he won election. But also, just look at DOGE and some of the cost cutting. There's no doubt that cuts in federal aid are coming. But it also does not prepare for a possible slip in tax revenues should the economy slow. Instead, the state, which already boasts the highest tax burden in America, will hike taxes yet again, this time via a $1.4 billion a year payroll surcharge that will slam workers and consumers. So much for Hochul's affordability agenda. And no, the governor's one-time refunds for roughly 8 million lower-income New Yorkers, $200 for singles, $400 for married couples, don't make for affordability. They're naked re-elect me bribes. Meanwhile, the deal bakes in huge budget shortfalls for coming years. And again, almost certainly for this year. Hochul and the leaders' plan for dealing with federal cuts is to head back to Albany in a few months to most likely impose new taxes that they'll surely blame on President Trump and Republicans in Congress. The Citizens Budget Commission head, Andrew Rain, said the month-late state general budget agreement fails to address the imminent threat facing New York, looming federal budget cuts. Instead of shoring up the state's fiscal foundation, lawmakers are dramatically increasing spending the state cannot afford in the long run. Yes, Hochul's aides say the governor got almost everything she sought in her bid to fix the discovery laws and to expand involuntary commitment of the mentally ill. They say the tweaks to discovery, for example, will make it harder for defense attorneys to get judges to toss out cases on absurd technicalities. Let's hope the fine print of the actual bill bears that out. Meanwhile, her proposed ban on public masking got watered down to triviality, and thus almost an invitation for masked goons who terrorize Jews and shut down campuses to keep it up. Mainly, New York's quote-unquote leaders agreed to up both spending and taxing and to kick the hard question a month or three down the road. No wonder so many taxpayers keep moving out of the state. And to piggyback off of that, you may remember this name, Republican Michael Henry. He is raising the necessary funds to campaign again in hopes of defeating Attorney General Letitia James. Henry, who ran a spirited bid back in 2022, has received contributions from 6,000 donors, including from more than 1,200 New Yorkers who are eligible for matching funds. The commercial litigator received a surprising 45% of the vote while losing to James 3 years ago, but vowed this time will be different. He spoke, I can't remember what event. I believe it was a Tri-County Republican event right before the election, but he spoke somewhere else and did a fantastic job. He said together, he spoke all over the state, but just locally. Together we will bring balance back to New York. It's time to fight for every New Yorker, and it's time for Tish James to go, he said. Next year's elections will be the first time the statewide candidates can qualify for 6-to-1 public matching funds. Yes, whatever you think of Michael Henry, whatever you think of Letitia James, you are paying for every dollar they make or fundraise $6 as taxpayers. Under the public finance program, a $25 donation generates $175, and a $100 donation counts as $700. He said the Attorney General's office belongs to the people, not political operatives. So this is going to be interesting to watch him, and good for him for getting out early. As I've said numerous times, I wish our gubernatorial candidate, whoever it may be, would get out there early. But he's getting out there early fundraising and doing a great job looking for those matching funds. Now, some Republicans are urging Representative Mike Lawler to not run for governor, according to NBC News, so take it with a grain of salt. Lawler says he hasn't made a final decision about whether he will launch a 2026 campaign for governor, but party leaders are already growing nervous about the prospects of his abandoning one of just 3 GOP-held districts Kamala Harris carried in the 2024 presidential election. Representative Richard Hudson, the chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee, who recently met with Trump at the White House, called Lawler an outstanding House candidate. I would prefer he not run for governor. Republicans see Lawler, a 2-term congressman and former member of the New York Assembly, as uniquely situated to win his Hudson Valley area district, which is why several senior Republican sources said they believe it would be difficult to recruit a candidate to replace him. Lawler, who was considered one of the most vulnerable GOP lawmakers up for re-election last cycle, ended up winning by nearly 6 percentage points. So they don't want to lose what would most likely go and become a Democrat seat. So asking him to maybe lay off this run for governor. Now, again, if you look at the cycle last go around, Lee Zeldin had already declared that he was running for governor at the beginning of April of the year before the election. And as of right now, it is the end of April, and we do not have a declared candidate. Now, we talked about the polls showing that if Elise Stefanik got in, she would have no problem winning the Republican primary. But yesterday, she bristled when Mike Johnson claimed they had had the discussion, and really didn't pull any punches. I mean, she wasn't outright nasty or something, but when it came up that there had been conversations about a run for governor, she tweeted, "This is not true. I've had no conversation with the speaker regarding the governor's race. Looking forward to the conversation about state and local tax deductions with New York members tomorrow. Stay tuned." That's not pulling any punches, saying that what Mike Johnson said was not true. Johnson named Stefanik, who had given up the powerful chairmanship of the House Republican Conference after Trump tapped her to be the ambassador to the UN. Now the chairwoman of the House GOP leadership, a lower-ranking position focused on strategy, communications, and executing Trump's agenda. So snapping back, if you will. But there has been supposedly at least conversations, maybe not with Speaker Johnson, but in general where Stefanik is rumored to be thinking about it. Also, speaking of Republicans and showing you how bad, well, we'll talk about that when we come back. A couple other Republican updates from New York, and then we'll move along. We got some other issues on Trump, 100 days. Your thoughts on the interview with Terry Moran, your thoughts on the rally, or the New York State budget. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. Welcome back as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. A couple quick announcements before we get back into New York State issues and read your comments. I want to highlight that tomorrow on the program we are going to be talking with Kyle Petty. Very excited about that. They have an amazing event happening next week. Look at this. You have the opportunity to meet Richard Petty, Herschel Walker. You see them all there. The list goes on and on. That's next Wednesday at the Radisson. And in the end, you help out an amazing cause, the Kyle Petty charity ride across America, and that's for Victory Junction. So we're going to learn all about that on tomorrow's program. And then on Friday, we're going to be talking with Jen Mullen. She's running for Steuben County Legislature. She is in the district that encompasses Caton, Hornby, and the town of Corning. Okay, couple viewer comments. This is Hochul. I'll give you a $200 and free breakfast and lunches if you vote for me. That's what it seems like. Comment from a different viewer. Hochul is a typical socialistically inspired Democrat. Spend, spend, spend. Tax, tax, tax. She and her comrades don't have 1 ounce of common sense. Thank you very much. The New York GOP state headquarters in Albany has been defaced for a second time in 2 weeks with Nazi symbols as leaders urge Democrats to tone down the rhetoric. But if you look at J.B. Pritzker, who all of a sudden the media loves even more, I mean, they never disliked him. He's a rich Democrat. But they were going for AOC, and now the Times says, wait a minute, he's talking tough, calling for violence, essentially. And the word Nazi and a swastika was there and these type of things. Where was I think that Ed Cox said Chuck Schumer with his constant demagoguery and past calls for political violence, and AOC with her present Fight the Oligarchy tour are fueling a climate of hostility that emboldens such hateful actors. They must immediately call on their supporters to reject political violence and restore civility to our discourse. House GOP Representative Elise Stefanik slammed the vandalism as a direct threat to Republican staff. Quote, "This was not a random act of vandalism. It was an escalation of political hatred deliberately aimed at intimidating Republicans and silencing our voices." Representative Mike Lawler, who we were just talking about, said the growing calls for political violence we're seeing around the country are being fueled by Democrats like Chuck Schumer, J.B. Pritzker, Frederica Wilson, and others who have used reckless rhetoric and actions, calling for Republicans to not know a moment of peace, saying Republicans are traitors, sending paid far-left activists to disrupt events and create a climate of hostility that emboldens and encourages these acts. And I guess there was a large turnout. I like how the media handles something like this. So you've got border czar Tom Homan. He's visiting Rochester. So the media takes this as an opportunity not to talk about Tom Homan or talk about the border policy. It's about demonstrations outside the Locust Club where he was attending a meeting. So he was going there to meet with those police officers that got in trouble by the state because they worked with ICE. You remember the story. And so he's meeting there to show his support. And the article becomes about the protest. A crowd of demonstrators from both sides of the ICE debate formed outside the Locust Club building. Some were waving thin blue line flags and holding signs in support of law enforcement. Opposing protesters were responding in support of immigrants. So there you go. Tom Homan in Rochester. One last thing, I don't want to go into the whole story, but the article is entitled, "Here Comes Cuomo, Again and Unapologetic." Welcoming him back. They hit him. He stood up. He didn't smile. He didn't flinch. He does not seek forgiveness. He seeks to win. Now he's back to finish the fight. Welcome to New York 2025. That is the glowing piece at Niagara Falls Reporter. I guess you would say singing the praises of fighter Andrew Cuomo, who's running for mayor in New York City, even though, as we've said, and Elise Stefanik said it so perfectly in those congressional hearings, he should never hold political office again. But tying in with what we were talking about with the GOP headquarters being vandalized, and Mike Lawler bringing up the fact that these town halls are very often being hijacked, if you will, by far-left organizations and groups, and that's why I've said numerous times on this program, and I know people have agreed and disagreed, that I don't think the town halls are done in good faith when the people are calling. I think in many instances, if the congressperson did show up to these kind of fake town halls, the protesters would be disappointed, to be honest. But just to kind of prove my point, if you will, Jasmine Lee writes, Republicans brave hostile crowds in the town halls back home. And she references where Mike Lawler took the stage, even at one point having to say, please tell me you're not objecting to the Pledge of Allegiance. And they go through all the times he was shouted down, heckled, belittled. So at the end of the day, if you attend this, what are you getting out of it? Now, if you were going there in good faith and wanted to hear what your congressperson said about, I don't know, Elon Musk, what they had to say about the big, beautiful budget bill, what they had to say about what a myriad of issues, you're not hearing any of it because the people in the crowd are shouting, booing, yelling, hissing. So to the point where your congressperson cannot even speak. So you get nothing out of it. I don't understand what the protesters get other than, I guess, the opportunity to be disrespectful, not really learn anything, and then send that video to news organizations like this that will then do a report on it. And you will look like you care the most. You will look like you are the leader of the resistance. So you get nothing accomplished. It's very Cory Booker-esque, right? You can talk, yell, boo, and hiss, and at the end of the day, you accomplish nothing. You didn't even get to learn where your congressperson stands on the issue. So you accomplish nothing, but that is now the face of the resistance because Cory Booker doing the same, speaking for 25 hours and 5 minutes on the Senate floor and accomplishing nothing at the end of the day, other than getting the media attention. So you can see the parallels between the two, the town halls and the Cory Booker speech. And then they go through what was said at Marjorie Taylor Greene's. But at the end of the day, what is the rationale for holding a town hall in today's climate? I will pose that question because I know people have disagreed with me in the past on this. What is the rationale? If you even look, and we had, I was not, in full disclosure, I was not on the phone call, but people had commented on this program that they were on the town hall that Congressman Nick Langworthy holds and said that that was even hijacked. So what, I guess, convinced me why I should want to go to a town hall where I'm just going to hear people booing, hissing, and yelling and name calling and give up my free time to go to this, or convince the congressperson to do that. Never mind me. Well, how can you convince a congressperson to say, hey, give up 2.5 hours of your free time so you can be booed, hissed at, and then, of course, the CNNs of the world, the Washington Post, the New York Times, they'll all report on it, and it just makes you look, well, it puts you in a negative fashion, and it's used as a way to attempt to convince you that everybody dislikes Trump and his agenda and the Republicans that are supporting that agenda. We're going to give you some more examples of kind of this rhetoric, the same kind of rhetoric that is being thrown around at the town halls. Then we do have some updates on the Trump administration. I see a lot of comments coming in, some waves coming in. Appreciate it. Keep them coming in, and we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you to Boss Security and Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are back broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. A couple comments from viewers. Mark writes, the border czar took a visit to Rochester, New York. I wonder what Hochul's take was on that. Yeah, I did not hear her comment, but she's been pretty busy trying to convince you that the budget is all but settled when we learn not quite there yet. Ken writes in, I wouldn't call it assisted suicide. I would call it compassionate end of suffering care. I watched my mom, dad, and brother waste away in a nursing home for several years. Most of the time, they didn't know where they were and laid silently in bed, only to be roused when they got a daily visit from family or being fed or medication. Those years would have been hell for them if they were cognizant of their situation. The only winners in their situation was the nursing homes. So I'm in favor of the end of suffering care, but due to greed in society, it would have to be treated like a DNR, do not resuscitate, instituted when the patient was in charge of their faculties, and after a doctor, psychiatrist determined that the patient was not going to recover and they were not aware of their surroundings. I think and I appreciate your point, Ken, and thank you for sharing your story. I think the concern is because of the nature of Albany and the nature of government and some of the horror stories people have heard about, specifically Canada agreeing to this. So New York, not the best at implementing something. I would point to the legalization of marijuana. So I think the concerns are more about who's in charge of the end of care, the end of suffering care legislation. I guess that's the point. We were talking about the media this morning, talking about kind of these attacks that have led to the vandals of the GOP headquarters in Albany. Listen to some of these headlines. Under Donald Trump, U.S. democracy is at risk of an imperial presidency. Now, that's off the heel of J.B. Pritzker saying that it's time to basically take the fight to the streets using very loaded rhetoric. And that's why, don't think for a moment, that's the reason why the New York Times, CNN this morning, and others are shining a spotlight on him, suggesting he should run for 2028 because they like this kind of rhetoric. Axios writes, most Americans now see Trump as a, quote, dangerous dictator, according to a poll. A majority of Americans say President Trump is a, quote, dangerous dictator who poses a threat to democracy and believes he's overstepped his authority by actions such as the mass firing of federal employees, according to a new survey. Do you believe that this polling institution, this survey, is in any way biased? The wide-ranging poll released yesterday on Trump's 100th day in office is the latest sign of him losing support for his immigration and economic policies. Now, you can say what you want about the hyper-focused criticism on his tariffs and things like that by the media. Are we to believe that because of this poll, again from far-left Axios, so keep that in mind, we are to believe that the American people are more in support of like a Chris Van Hollen supporting Abrego Garcia in El Salvador than we are for the Trump administration and President Trump himself, who has essentially shut down border crossings. So Public Religion Research Institute, that they call a nonpartisan organization, 52% agreed with the provocative statement that Trump, quote, is a dangerous dictator whose power should be limited before he destroys American democracy. And this is front page on Axios. And going back to the point we were making about the interview that Trump gave yesterday with Terry Moran, this is so predictable. They're doing this in an attempt to convince you that the president has lost all support that he received in that landslide victory. So in 100 days, well, since he's been sworn in, but on top of that, a couple months from when he was elected, that all of that support has not only dwindled, not only gone away, that now people see him as a dangerous dictator. The survey is among those that have shown the most dissatisfaction with Trump's push for mass deportation, sweeping tariffs, more control of colleges, and firing or laying off more than 100,000 federal employees. Those priorities have led the new administration to unilaterally end diversity and equity programs, cancel student visas, and continue to keep at least one mistakenly deported man in a notorious El Salvador prison despite a court order to return him. Again, not mentioning that the man is an illegal alien from El Salvador with alleged ties to MS-13 and alleged record history of spousal abuse. I believe there is a reason why you've never heard of the Public Religion Research Institute and this poll, but I would also add, why do you think that organization exists? It's so places like Axios can present it as the gospel truth. All right, we have to take another short break. Oh, quick breaking story. Did you see that Trump, this is a story that we brought to you last week, but I think it's worth mentioning. Trump fired Kamala Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff. The Trump administration yesterday fired former second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, from the board that oversees the U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, as the president aims to install more steadfast Israeli supporters at the institution. Emhoff, as you know, Vice President Harris's husband, former vice president, was among several Biden administration appointees to the board removed by President Trump. Quote, "Today I was informed of my removal from the United States Holocaust Memorial Council. Let me be clear, Holocaust remembrance and education should never be politicized. To turn one of the worst atrocities in history into a wedge issue is dangerous, and it dishonors the memory of 6 million Jews murdered by Nazis that this museum was created to preserve." Now, Emhoff, who is Jewish and served on former President Joe Biden's White House anti-Semitism task force after a startling rise in anti-Semitism, not just on college campuses, but in the streets after October 7th. He was appointed to the board in January and was slated to serve a 5-year term. We don't have to go through everybody on the board. On behalf of President Donald J. Trump, I'm writing to inform you that your position as a member of the United States Holocaust Memorial Council is terminated, effective immediately. Read an email. Thank you for your service. Carolyn Levitt said President Trump looks forward to appointing new individuals who will not only continue to honor the memory of those who perished in the Holocaust, but who are also steadfast supporters of the state of Israel. All right, we got to take a short break. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, please stay with us. As always, we thank our good friends at Boss Security in Horseheads for bringing us this amazing view of historic Market Street with the Frankly Speaking roof cam as we broadcast live from the Hesselson studio. Comment from a viewer, from Mark. He says, Canada is claiming that Trump is trying to make them broke so that Trump can take Canada over. And Canada says it's never going to happen. Yeah, yesterday we heard from the newly elected Prime Minister, who in his victory speech said it's never going to happen, that Canada is going to stay Canada. But Trump, in that interview over the weekend, I think it was over the weekend, saying that he's pretty serious about taking Canada. Okay, the Wisconsin Supreme Court stripped the judicial powers of the circuit court judge who was accused of hiding an illegal immigrant who was wanted by ICE. Milwaukee County Circuit Judge Hannah Dugan was temporarily relieved of her duties Tuesday after she was arrested and charged by the FBI with obstruction of justice. Quote, in the exercise of the constitutional authority and in order to uphold the public's confidence in the courts of this state during the criminal proceedings against Judge Dugan, we conclude in our own motion that it is in the public's best interest that she be temporarily relieved of her official duties. Dugan is prohibited from exercising her judicial powers until a further order of the court. Now, she was charged with allegedly concealing Mexican national Endurado Flores Ruiz inside her courthouse after a pretrial hearing on April 18th. She is charged with obstructing a federal agency and concealing an individual to prevent an arrest. This all began after she learned that 2 plainclothed Customs and Border Patrol agents were outside with a warrant to arrest Flores Ruiz. The 30-year-old migrant was in court for 3 misdemeanor battery charges stemming from a fight in March. He had already been deported out of the U.S. back in 2013, and there was no record of him ever crossing back into the country legally, according to the criminal complaint. So they were there for the trial to arrest him. She, of course, did not like that because of kind of this activism, this anti-Trump kind of mindset. So she tried to shield him and protect him from being deported. She was alerted to the federal agent's presence and confronted them in the hallway, becoming visibly upset with an angry demeanor. She should not be challenged. She is a judge. Who are they to uphold the law in her courtroom and arrest this man? That's a little bit of the kind of Barney Fife mentality. You get that taste of power, and who are you to come to my court to do your job? She initially demanded they leave the courthouse, but changed her mind and directed them to Chief Judge Carl Ashley's office after she was shown the arrest warrant. The frustrated judge returned to the courtroom and escorted Flores Ruiz and his attorney out of the room through the jury door to a non-public area of the courthouse where the chief judge had advised the feds that they could not arrest Flores Ruiz, the charging document alleged. Quote, these events were also unusual for 2 reasons, the complaint states. First, the courtroom deputy had previously heard Judge Dugan direct people not to sit in the jury box because it was exclusively for the jury's use. Second, according to the courtroom deputy, only deputies, juries, court staff, and in-custody defendants being escorted by deputies use the back jury door. Defense attorneys and defendants who were not in custody never used the jury door. Now, Dugan, who has been working at pushing Flores Ruiz's case through, quietly adjourned the hearing. This happened without the prosecutor's knowledge or participation, even though they were present in court to handle Flores Ruiz's case on behalf of the state, and even though victims were present in the courtroom. He was eventually captured by agents after he was seen fleeing on foot. FBI Director Kash Patel accused Dugan of intentionally misdirecting the federal agents, saying, thankfully, our agents chased down the perp on foot, and he's been in custody since. But the judge's obstruction created increased danger to the public. Judge Dugan, according to her attorney, said wholeheartedly regrets and protests her arrest. It was not made in the interest of public safety. So she has been removed of her duty for the time being. Yesterday, Trump, this is where we go through the stories quickly. Get your last minute comments in because we do have one last break, and I'll read your last minute comments on our way out the door. But furious, Trump called Jeff Bezos. If you heard this story yesterday, Jeff Bezos' Amazon was going to put, when you check out on Amazon, a tariff fee. Well, Trump called him furious, saying that it was a politically hostile plan, that it was politically motivated, and after that call, Amazon backed down. Amazon said it had ruled out a plan to display a tariff surcharge on products listings after its founder, Jeff Bezos, got an angry call from Trump in the White House. The e-commerce giant said yesterday that it weighed showing import charges on its discount shopping site Haul, but said the idea, quote, was never approved and is not going to happen, end quote. That's after Trump placed an angry call to billionaire Bezos over, this is according to Punchbowl News, that Amazon had planned to display, quote, how much of an item's cost is derived from tariffs right next to their product's total listed price. All right, we got to take a short break. That will wrap up today's edition. So get your last minute comments in, and we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. The Frankly Speaking Roof Cam brought to you by Boss Security in Horseheads. Contact them today for all your business and home security needs. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, wrapping up today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Michael Goodwin at the New York Post says Trump's first 100 days illustrates his strength and mindset, which is decisive, bold, and in a hurry. And I had someone ask, and I think this is a good point. So there's been so little major legislation from the House. It's kind of fascinating because you've seen, obviously, the House and the Senate controlled by Republicans, so little coming out of there, but so much done from the White House, also run by Republicans, though. His comeback victory was decisive as he swept all 7 battleground states. You know that. So he took that landslide victory and ran with it. And it's taken some heat. I mean, you saw that yesterday with Terry Moran. Not a lot of heat. I'm just saying they're looking for any way to criticize him, try to stop this agenda. And that's why I think they've made some very poor decisions, like siding and defending Abrego Garcia in El Salvador. The media and the left has not been able to catch up. Trump has been moving so quickly, so fast, that by the time they create one talking point, he's 10 talking points ahead and 10 stories ahead. That's why we talk so often about the Trump news cycle on this program, where it is hard to keep up, and that's why here at the end we are going through so many quick stories. But if you look at it, no matter what that poll from Axios and others said, there is a border that is now closed, essentially, that we see the deportation, and you see support for this, no matter what the polls are saying. So that's why Trump is saying that he believes that they should be investigated, actually, is what he said, but that they're misleading. And I think they are being used, like that Axios poll, to suggest that after that landslide victory, that all of a sudden no one supports him after 100 days. That's why they're trying to use, and when I say they, the media, trying to use the town halls, right? Trying to say, well, that was a Republican district, and now everybody in that Republican district hates the Trump policies. It's so easy to predict, so easy to see. But that is what we're dealing with 100 days in. As the Post editorial board has, and you can find this for yourself, Trump's stunning first 100 days, the highs, the lows, and the road ahead. You can find this. This is about a 10-page piece here. But they say, work out the kinks, Mr. President, and stay focused. He's already made some stunning progress. All right, oh, and by the way, White House Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles, gives Trump a behind-the-scenes. She gives a behind-the-scenes look of Trump at the New York Post, but also gives him an A+ for his first 100 days in office. That does it for today's edition of Frankly Speaking. Don't forget, tomorrow on the program, we'll be talking with Kyle Petty. He'll be joining us in the 7 o'clock hour. On Friday, we'll be talking with Steuben County legislative candidate Jen Mullen. She is in the district that encompasses Caton, Town of Corning, and Hornby. So that'll be on Friday's broadcast. As always, you can keep the comments coming in to that number on the bottom of the screen. That is for 24/7. We'd love to hear you and what you have to say at any time, and we'll try to do our best to read them on the air during tomorrow's broadcast. Really looking forward to Kyle Petty. Don't miss out on that in the 7 o'clock hour. But you know what? Join us every weekday morning, starting at 6 a.m. for Frankly Speaking, only on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We will see you tomorrow morning, bright and early. I look forward to it. All right.